What's up everyone, this is Dariusz Kalbarczyk, co-founder of MG Poland, JS Poland, AngularMaster.dev and WorkshopFest.dev. Welcome back to Angular Master Podcast. Today, together with Dhananjay Kumar, who is an excellent speaker, trainer, consultant and organizer of ngIndia conference, we will talk about Angular services. Hi Dhananjay, how are you?
Hi, I'm very fine. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. So before we dive into the world of technology, for those who don't know you yet, please tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone who is listening to this podcast. My name is Dhananjay Kumar, and I'm from India. I'm an Angular consultant and Angular educator. I have been teaching Angular for the last 5 years in India. I'm a published author on a book on Angular, and I'm very active in Indian Angular community. I'm founder of ngIndia. So that is pretty much about me, and I'm a Google developer expert in Angular as well.
How did you start your adventure in programming?
So after in India, you go to school until standard 12. Like you go to school for 12 to 15 years, and after that you go to college to learn either arts or science or engineering or medical, or commerce or finance. You choose a vertical stream to do your graduation. I selected engineering, computer science and engineering. So I did my engineering in computer science, so I'm by education a computer science engineer. So during that period, I had to learn, and I started learning programming. Mainly, I started with language C, and since then, like in college, I learned C and Java and a little bit of .NET, and then Since then, I started coding, programming, and then when I started working, I worked on for a very long time, like for almost 8 years, I worked on .NET coding in C# pretty much, and since 2017, I'm coding in JavaScript, TypeScript, and Angular. So that's my journey, and I started coding because I had to for my study.
You are the organizer of ngIndia. Tell us how and why you created this amazing event. I say amazing because I had the opportunity to be a speaker, and it was an astounding experience.
Yeah, so as I mentioned that I started Angular at the end of 2016 and in the beginning of 2017. And when I started doing Angular, I saw a lot of events happening around the world on Twitter. And I was getting very inspired by those events, for example, NG Poland and other events. So I got inspired. I started building community because when I started Angular back in 2017, there was no Angular community as such in India. There might be some smaller communities, but not a larger community. Like there were many React communities and React events, React workshops and all were going on that time, but there was very few Angular events. So I saw an opportunity there. I was already inspired by people as such you and Michael and Todd, and that time Angular team had Stephen Fluin and Igor, and also I was already inspired following them on the Twitter and LinkedIn. So I thought it's an opportunity to start just an Angular community, not a conference per se. And I started going to different cities of India and started teaching Angular. And since Angular was very new at that time and people wanted to learn Angular, I got very good response. Like wherever I used to go to whichever cities in India, such that Mumbai or Ahmedabad or Pune or Indore or Bangalore or Hyderabad, Delhi, people used to come in a large number. I remember once we did in 2017 of Angular workshop, and all these were like free workshops. And we did one workshop in 2017 or maybe at the end of 2016 in Gurgaon, Microsoft Gurgaon office, and around like 400 people came to that workshop.
Wow.
And the number was so huge that the people of Microsoft had to remove chair and everyone had to sit on the floor. And all of those developers, amazing developers, they sat on the floor for a whole day to learn Angular. And those photos from that event is very popular on internet. And it was a great motivation for me. And I was already following, as I told you, NG conferences around the world, like NG Poland and NG Japan and NG Conf. And in 2017, I had an opportunity to go to Japan to give a training to a customer. And during that time, only NG Japan was happening. So I went and attended NG Japan. And there I met Stephen Flumin, who was in Angular team at that time. And there I got an idea that why not we should do ngIndia. So I did first ngIndia in 2018. It was like a smaller 180 people came. In 2019, we did bigger, around 350 people came, where you came as a speaker. Thank you for supporting. You helped us by bringing sponsors such as 7N, and you came, that time you were developer advocate for 7N. You came, flew all from Poland, and many other speakers like Michael Hartke, Steny Mira, and JC Sanders, and Vikram from Angular team. And yeah, in 2019, suddenly Angular ngIndia became a brand. Then 2020, we were lucky to do offline events because we do in February, and this COVID thing started from March. So we had a huge conference in 2020, around 1,000 people attended that. And again, we had Rob and Manu from Angular team. And again, Michael, I asked you to come also, but you couldn't come. So we had a very good ngIndia in 2020. And then this COVID happened. But in COVID, we were doing this ngIndia webinars on regular interval. And then again, we did ngIndia in 2022. We couldn't do it 2021 due to COVID. And personally, I'm not a big fan of online conferences. So we were waiting for the time to do offline. But in the meantime, we were doing the webinars and all those things online. And again, 2022, we did on 21st of May, and it was, again, a very huge success, like around 600 people attended that. You might have seen the photos on social media. And so this is pretty much ngIndia. ngIndia is the largest Angular conference in India. It's helping people. Like I remember people who came as attendee in 2019. They got inspired. They went and they started contributing to open source, and they became MVP. They became GD. They got better opportunities. They became speakers. They got opportunities to work in countries such as America, Australia, Germany. So ngIndia is helping developers here. I know, like at least on my finger, 10 people who started contributing to open source or started writing articles because they attended ngIndia and they got inspired by speakers and the whole ambience over there. So I'm very happy, and I'm very proud of ngIndia and the whole Angular community in India, which we have built.
We will see you soon at NG Poland and JS Poland conferences. What can we expect during your lectures?
So when I was submitting my talk for NG Poland, I know that Angular 14 is coming up, and people would like to learn about whatever coming in Angular 14. And then, of course, those advanced topics like how to manage state and micro front ends and those kind of things. But I do a lot of training in India on Angular. And almost like since 1st of August 2019, when I started giving training professionally, is 3 years in a week. I have taught many students, and what I realized that students are really struggling to understand one of the most powerful and useful feature of Angular, which is Angular services and Angular dependency injection. Like as great Martin Fowler said, that having a dependency injection in your application, and you are saying that my application is just special because I have dependency injection, is as good as saying my car is just special because it has wheels. So dependency injection is inbuilt in Angular. You do not have to add any third-party libraries or something like that as you do in Java or .NET Core. So, and developers are not aware of that. They just go and create one service like ngGS product, and this product service got created. They put their own business logic in the service, and that's it. They do not know even they don't know that what is the difference between providers and providing, how they can change a service at the runtime, and those kind of things. So here is a great opportunity to teach developers in 30 to 40 minutes about one of the most powerful feature of Angular, that is dependency injection. And as a developer, if you know a couple of things like when to use providers, when to use providing, how a service is traceable, if you provide a service in the component, then how it is going to affect all its children. If you provide a service as a module, then how it is going to affect the whole feature module, how services can be injected so that you have different instances for the lazy loaded models. And those things I have seen developers are doing it in a very messy ways. So here my purpose is that to the community of Poland, when they are in front of me learning, these in 40 minutes when they go, they are empowered and educated on one of the most powerful features of Angular, which is Angular services and dependency injection. So that's my whole purpose of teaching this topic in a STEAM conference such as NG Poland.
Amazing. So let's talk about services. And so what are the Angular services in general?
So Angular services, if we put it in a very simple English term, Angular services are nothing but a class where you put the functionalities and data which you wish to share across multiple components. It's a very, very basic definition. So in Angular, your Angular application is nothing but a component tree. Your Angular application is going to have many components, and you can visualize the whole Angular application as a component tree. Now, these components can be related to each other or cannot be related to each other. If they are related to each other, then there are different ways that they would communicate, such as input, output, view child, contain child, template variable, and so on. However, if components are not related to each other, how they are going to share functionalities and data among each other. Here service comes to the action, like you put those functionalities and data which you wish to share among unrelated components. And even related components, you can use service for that. So by default definition is Angular services are singleton, available throughout the application, and you put the code, or you put the functionalities and data you wish to share across components or even across other services. That's what Angular services are.
So Angular services are singleton. Is it always true?
By default, when you run the command ngGS and your service name, Angular scaffold a service for you. So that service by default is singleton because that service has that injector decorator. Inside injector decorator is using providing root. So if you do not change anything in that configuration, it's singleton. But if you reprovide this service, you can go ahead and, so by default it is singleton when you create that using Angular CLI command. However, if you go and reprovide the service, so let's say that I have this service created. I have a service for product and I have created that using Angular CLI. By default, it is singleton. But let's say that I have a component called invoice, and in that invoice component, also in the component decorator have providers or a provider's property. If you reprovide the same service to that component, then Angular is going to create, and you are using, of course, that service in that component or any of its child component, then Angular is going to create another object for that. So putting it roughly that if you reprovide a service, if you are providing a service 5 times, then Angular is going to create roughly 5 objects of that service. But by default, if you do not reprovide it, you are just relying on providing root. It's singleton. And why and it has to be singleton because as I told you that the main purpose of service is to share functionalities and data. So if you have multiple instances of the service, then this sharing wouldn't happen. So let's say that if you and I are two components, and if you want to share functional, and if let's say that our friend Michael is a service, so if you want to share his t-shirt, there should be one object of Michael. And we should have access to that one object. If we have multiple objects of Michael, you have access to another object, I have access to another object, then we have two different t-shirts of Michael with us. So I hope I'm making sense here.
What is tree-shakeable Angular service?
So when you create a service, so tree shaking is a generic JavaScript terms. It is not like a specific to Angular. So let's say that you have 5 JS files, a.js, b.js, c.js, and e.js, and a main file called main.js or index.js. Now in this main.js, you are using abcd.js, but you have created e.js, but you are not using that. Then this e.js should not be part of the final output bundle, because in JavaScript world, at the end of the day, that JS file has to be downloaded in the browser such that your website works. So the whole purpose is to make that JS file, size of that JS file as small as possible in the beginning, such that your user doesn't have to wait. So any JS file which is not used inside application, if you are not making it part of the final output bundle, this process is called tree shaking. Now, Angular services was not tree shaking. I guess in Angular version 6 or version 8, if I'm not wrong, maybe version 6 or version 8, they started coming by default. Like as I told you, that Angular services are by default tree shakeable. Angular services are by default singleton. Angular services are by default tree shakeable. They are tree shakeable as well. So when you create a service, and if you are using providing option to make a service, to provide a service, then that service is tree shakeable. Means you have created that service, but if that service is not used inside your application, if you have created a service and if that service is not used by any component or anywhere in the application, Angular would not make that service as part of your final output bundle. That will be removed from final output bundle. Hence, size of your final output bundle is very small, small. So that's what tree shakeable services are. So by default, Angular services are singleton, and by default, they are tree shakeable now, starting Angular 8 or Angular 6, if I'm not wrong. And how you identify a service is tree shakeable? If you are providing that service using providing option. If you provide service using provider's array option, then that service is not tree shakeable. Means even if you are not using that service anywhere in the application, Angular is going to make that service as part of your final output bundle. So that's what tree shakeable Angular services are.
So one more time, what is the difference between providers and provided-in options?
It's a very good question. People get confused a lot about this. So as we are talking about tree shakeable service, so you can provide a service, like how Angular look at your app service, right? So when you have, so let's say that you are using a service, then Angular would look. So you are using a service, then Angular step 1, Angular will check whether you are using a service. If that step is passed, then Angular will check whether you have injected that service. If that step is passed, then Angular will check whether you have provided that service or not. Now this step, like you can provide, if you have not provided that service, then Angular would throw you runtime error, R3 null injector error. So this step is very important, providing the service. Now Angular gives you option to provide a service in two ways. Either you can provide a service using providing option, which you see by default comes when you create a service using ngGS command, or you can provide a service using provider's array. Now ng module decorator, like have provider's array property, @component decorator also have provider's array property. So you can provide a service either using provider's array or using providing option. If you provide a service using providing option, then that service is a tree shakeable service. Means if service is created and not used in the application, Angular will not make that service as part of final output bundle. However, if you provide a service using provider's array option, then that service is not a tree shakeable service, and it would be part of final output bundle regardless whether it is used or not used.
You're listening, Angular Master Podcast. Listen, code, repeat. Everything you need to know to become an Angular super developer.
In context of service, how you suggest to create smart and dumb components?
Yeah, so if you look at like a smart, so let me first explain what is smart component and dumb component. So smart components are those components where you put your business logic and you're in the smart component, you are actually consuming the service, you are injecting the service and using it. And smart components are then using some child components where you are passing data from a smart component to that child component. And the purpose of the child components are only to display that data. So a smart component is also called as sometimes as a container component, and these dumb components are also called as sometimes as a presenter components. Now, a dumb component never talks to service directly. If a dumb component is talking to a service directly, then it is no longer a dumb component, it's a smart component, in my opinion. So in context of service, your smart component should talk to service. So you inject your service in a smart component. And what advantage it gives you that now you are writing unit test and you are writing a detailed unit test only for the smart component. And dumb components are getting data only through iterate input properties from the parent component. So smart component is always a parent component, and they are emitting event through iterate output. So in context of service, a dumb component never talks to a service directly. A smart component talks to the service.
To share the data between unrelated components, we use services. Yeah. Can you share some steps for our listeners?
Okay, so this is good. So the step one is that you create a service. Step two, in that service, whatever data you have to share, you wrap. So step one, create a service. Step two, wrap the data which you need to share across multiple unrelated components. In one of the subject, I would recommend behavior subject, because behavior subject has a default value, and whoever subscribes to behavior subject, they would have access to last emitted value. So wrap the data inside behavior subject, and maybe you have a set data property. So whenever you set data, you again emit a new value from this behavior subject. So both places you are subscribing to this behavior subject, and you are setting the service. You are setting the data in the service, and whenever you are setting the data, you are emitting a new value from the behavior subject. So the combination is that create a service and wrap your data inside a behavior subject, or in a normal term as an observable. And then this should be and unrelated components should work with that behavior subject, subscribe to that behavior subject. If unrelated component is only displaying the data and not modifying it, the best is that like one of the unrelated component is only displaying the data. Best is that they are using the async pipe.
So how about async pipe and services?
So I see that like the steps for services, like mainly in the services, what we do is that we make an API call. And when we make, and in Angular, when this HTTP client module, the module which is given to us to make API call, it actually returns to an observable. So what we do, we create a service, and then we make and let's say that in the service, we have put a function called get data. That get data function would return us observable of, let's say, iProduct audit. Now in the component, what we do, we subscribe to that observable, and then we display that data in a table or anywhere using ng4 directive. Now the challenge in this approach is that actually you are doing the both tasks, your business logic and your presentation is in the same component, which again, I answered earlier that you should not do that. You should have a smart component, and then you just display to display, you should have a dumb component. So the challenge with this approach is that you need to subscribe, and if you forget to unsubscribe, then there could be memory leaks. You got to unsubscribe as well. You need to make sure that you are unsubscribing from the observable in ng on destroy lifecycle hooks. That is step 2 you need to do. So far, so good. The real challenge comes that if component is set to on-push change detection strategy, then for a component which change detection strategy is set to on-push, Angular runs change detector only when you pass a new reference to one of the input declarative properties. Now, since you are working with observable does not pass new reference. It only notifies you on the same reference if there is a new data. Now, since you are not getting new reference and your component is set to on-push change detection strategy, Angular would not run the change detector, and you have the updated data inside the component, but your template is not projecting the updated data. Now, how you are going to fix that? You will fix that by running change detector manually. You will inject change detector ref, and in the subscribe method, you would say this.cd.mark for change. So actually, the best approach to work with observable is that you subscribe. Step 1, step 2, you unsubscribe, and step 3, make sure that you are calling the change detector manually for on-push component. So these 3 steps you have to do that to working with an observable. Now, Angular has given you a better solution for that. Angular tells you that if you are working with observable, you directly use async pipe. You do not need to do these 3 steps. If you are using async pipe, Angular framework will do these tasks for you. So if you are using async pipe, what async pipe does, it subscribes to the latest emitted value of an observable or promise. If required, it runs change detector for you manually, and it unsubscribes when that component gets destroyed. So that's the purpose of async pipe. Now I'll explain you async pipe in context of a smart and dumb component. So let's say that I have a component called product component, and in the product component, I'm making the service, I'm consuming the service. So product component has this observable returning from the get products function of product service. Now, product component has the observable data. Now, product component is a smart component, is making a API call, is a consuming service is injected here. Now, you want to display this product either in a table, or you want to display this product either in a list. So what you have done, you have created 2 more components called product table component and product list component. Now you are using this product table component and product list component inside product component. Now product table component is going to have only one input declarative property products of type observable, and it is getting that data from the product component when you are using app product table inside product component. So now product table component is a dumb component, and it is expecting only, and it has one input declarative properties of type observable. So product component already have observable products. It would pass it here. So just one variable declaration in your product table component. And now on the template of product table component, wherever you are doing *ng for your let p of products, you use this async pipe and make sure that your product table component is on push change detection strategy. So a dumb component should be on push change detection strategy and getting observable from the parent component, which is a smart component, and using the async pipe. So here, very less unit tests you got to write it for the table component. And then same goes with the product list component. So all your code would be in the product component, but it doesn't have a lot of, it is not displaying the data, it's just passing the data to dumb components. So here async pipe comes to the action. All your child component always be on the on push, like the best practice is that it should be on the on push and using async pipe. So to summarize what async pipe does, it subscribes to the observable, it unsubscribes when component is destroying, and it runs change detector manually for you if required. So this is the purpose of async pipe.
To summarize our discussion, how to create separate objects for separate lazy loaded modules.
This is now very easy in your version of Angular, I guess starting in version 9. So when you create a service, you see that option providedIn :root. If you change that root option to option any, so if you set the value providedIn :any, then what Angular does, Angular will create separate object for separate lazy loaded modules if you are using that service in that lazy loaded modules. So let's say that you have 3 lazy loaded modules, one main module and two normal models, two features model. And I'm assuming that you are using this service in all these models. Then if your providing code is set to any, then your service is traceable, and Angular is going to create 4 objects of this service. One each for each lazy loaded model, so 3 lazy loaded models and 3 objects, and one object for all eagerly loaded models and main models. So if you want to create different objects for different lazy loaded models, instead of going around and writing a lot of code, just change providing :in.
Dhananjay, what advice would you give to people who are starting their career in the software world today? And what for those who are old-timers?
So people who are starting, I would say that don't get confused with a lot of buzzwords around on the internet. Still, so for example, you may hear a lot of buzzwords, and as a young people, we get a lot motivated by those buzzwords. But the real job is still like if I take an example of India. India has 1.5 billion people, and out of 1.5 billion people, still the whole police system of India is not fully computerized. So it says that still there are 1.5 billion people who can get connected for their security purposes through just a website, right? So building website is still have more than 3 billion users on the planet, which may sound very not that fancy for young people, that okay, creating a website, and they may get a lot motivated by hearing terms such as Web3 or cryptocurrency or those words, but they are still, I mean, if you have interest in that, do that, but they are not like the bullet, the magic to getting a job. There is a job still in the traditional technology. So you either, if backend exercise, you go and learn creating APIs, doesn't matter in Java or .NET or Python, you need to know how to get API in the same way. If you are interested in front end, doesn't matter, you can go and start with either Angular or React, whatever you like. And do a lot of practice. So never try to learn from these Twitter threads and these resources and that resources. Like, I'm an Angular teacher and Angular developer for the last 5 years, and I think I'm doing pretty good. Sometimes when I read those Twitter threads about these Angular resources you need to become Angular developers, I get surprised. That if someone is new and reading that, it's completely wrong information for them. So you find a good mentor maybe, or find a good book. So always try to read from books, or instead of learning from YouTube, and watching random videos, I would recommend that buy a good course on Udemy and go step by step, learn, build. So that's to the new people. For the people who have experience, and that what I have felt while teaching people here. Last week only I was teaching Angular for 40 hours to people who had minimum 10 years of experience in .NET. What mistake they do is that the first step of learning is unlearn. If you are solving a problem in .NET, in a .NET way, you have to first leave that mind. In Angular, you got to solve Angular in Angular way, not in the .NET way. So many experienced people, they try to solve a problem. First, they underestimate this framework. They think, it's just a framework. They don't read documentation. They don't, and they try to then solve the problem in the technology which they are master of. So if you are learning a new technology, first is unlearn and then learn. That's what my advice would be for the experienced people.
Thank you so much. Last question. 2 books you would recommend to our listeners, one technical and one non-technical.
Lately, I'm reading a book, a technical book by author Alex XUE. He writes on system design, and I got his book, System Design Interview Version Volume 2, which is not available in India, so I had to buy it very costly. And I find that book very good. So technical, I would recommend that book if you are into system design. If if you are into and if you are starting with JavaScript, I would recommend You Do Not Know JavaScript book series. That is very good. Non-technical, lately I read a book called The Originals, and I recommend everyone to read that book. Originals tells you that, so should I say a little bit about that book as well?
If you can, why not?
Yeah. So that book Originals is really, that really helped me. Like, for example, if you follow modern management and modern management strategies, they tell you that, hey, you have to be perfect. Like, work hard and create a perfect product and then go out and sell that product or market that product. But this modern management is very much behind perfect. However, that book contradicts that. It tells us a lot of example where they say that you just keep doing a lot of work and one of your work could become perfect. For example, Leonardo da Vinci, he did not painted only Mona Lisa. He painted many paintings in his life. Only Mona Lisa and The Last Supper became popular. In the same way, Shakespeare has written many plays and many poetry in his career, and some of them became popular, such as Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet and all. So if you look at these big people, they kept doing their work, and some of them, their work became so-called perfect or so-called popular. So like I used to do, okay, now I should only write article which is not available on internet, and this article, when it would go out, it will change the way human are breathing. No, it doesn't work that way. You just keep publishing, keep writing your work, keep doing your work, and some of your work you think it is not your great work, but by time that can become your great work for people. So this book I really recommend. And also this book tells you that how you should take risks. Like if you want to start something, for example, if you are working as a consultant and want to do training, don't want to become a trainer, don't leave consulting job and then start training. Maybe you just take an off 2 weeks from consulting job and do a training and see whether you really want to do training. So I would recommend this book, The Originals. It's a very good book.
Dhananjay, thank you so much for this great discussion, and see you in Poland in 3 months.
Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast, and I look very forward to coming to Poland. I have read a lot about Poland. And I know 2-3 people from Poland, including you, and they are like very dear to me. So I look very forward. And just for our listener, that in NG Poland, I'm doing a talk on Angular services and dependency injection. In JS Poland, I'm doing a talk on JavaScript objects, in which I'll talk about writable, enumerable, configurable, and prototype and constructors. So that talk could be also very useful for you. And I'm very excited and counting days, like 2-3 months more to be there.
Finally, please subscribe to our podcast, leave a like and a comment to help us continue to grow.